ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः। श्री स्वामीनारायण भगवाननी जय। अक्षर पुरुषोत्तम महाराजनी जय। राधा कृष्ण देवनी जय। सियावर रामचंद्र भगवाननी जय। गुरु हरि प्रमुख स्वामी महाराजनी जय। In the divine presence of Bhagavan Swaminarayan, in the equally divine presence of my Guru Hari Pramukh Swami Maharaj, in the respected presence of all the people who have come here tonight to listen, who are not sitting in this hall, but who are sitting in all the other 9 halls of AMA. So I would like to thank them first. And all the people who are standing and seated not in the seats, I'd also like to show my respect to them. Then all the people present in this auditorium. And then lastly, the guest on the dais, my friend Mukesh Bhai. The moment you hear somebody begin like this, you start wondering that where is the order? Tonight I have come to tell you that you can create your own order. When you think different, when you imagine different, you make a difference. So the topic of my talk is the power of imagination. And I would like to begin with a simple imaginary story. But the message is real, very real. The story is imaginary, the message is real. Once there were 3 college friends, the best of friends. They all decided to do MBA. One enrolled at Harvard in America, the other at LSE, London School of Economics in England, and the third managed to crawl into IIM Ahmedabad. But they were the best of friends. After finishing their graduation, somehow they all decided that they had enough of life. And they all decided to become padris, priests, all 3 of them. So they opened up their little churches. 20 years passed. Like all reunions, all 3 of them decided that they wanted to get together, a friends reunion, like you have college reunions, school reunions, teachers reunion, friends reunion. They decided a date and time, and they would all arrive on time. Now look at how the story unfolds. Obviously the British guy, he was not on time. He came in his old Austin Morris, chugged along, almost a derelict second-hand car, and he waited, the padri waited. The American priest, he rolled in his Cadillac. 5 minutes later, and he told him that the British guy was 5 minutes early. Americans are always in time. They change time. After half an hour, you know why. After half an hour, the Indian padri arrived in a glimmering Rolls Royce. Obviously, it's been taken over by Tata. So All three of them got together, they hugged each other, remembered old memories, and they felt so good and comfortable. Then after all the cursaries were over, then they nudged each other and said, look, we are padris and the whole world confesses to us. I think the time has arrived that we should make a confession of how we made our wealth. Let's confess to each other. So the first turn was of the British, and he said, look, after my Sunday Mass, after I give my sermon, all the congregation that has gathered, I take out my hat, then pass the hat around, and people would put in their collection, contribution. I'll bring in the collection. Then how much land do I occupy on this earth? A small circle. So I will create a small circle on the ground, throw all the money up. That which falls in the circle, I keep. The rest, I donate to do God's work. I give to God. That's how I've made my meager amount. And that's why the simple Austin Morris. The American said, look, I also do my Sunday Mass. I also pass my hat around. All the collection that's gathered, but we Americans don't believe in small circles. We draw lines. Anybody on this side is with me, anybody on that side are against me. Simple lines. He said, I throw up the money, that which falls on this line, I keep. And that which falls on the other side, I do and donate for God's work, give it to God. The Indian said, well, in my ceremony and in my sermon, we always say God is up there. I collect the money, throw it up, that which God wants, He keeps, the rest come back to me. Now, here comes the message. The story is imaginary, the message is real, very real. I want to ask you the very simple thing that all three of them, what made the real difference? All three of them equally educated, same. Their profession was the same. Their age was the same. Their effort was the same. What made the difference? Imagination made the difference. It is imagination that made one priest poor, the other priest rich. Let's not get into the issues of moral or immorality, whether the priests were moral or immoral, whether they were right or wrong. Simple analysis would tell us imagination made a world of difference. And it's not something that I'm talking from the back of my mind. Albert Einstein, he said something very interesting which emphasizes this same point. Einstein says that I have come to the conclusion, one of the most famous thinkers and scientists of mankind, not just our time. He says that I have come to the conclusion that the gift of fantasy, imagination, has meant more to me than my talent of absorbing positive knowledge. He is supposed to be the most knowledgeable scientist, and he says, my gift of imagination has meant more to me than my talent for absorbing positive knowledge. Not only that, he clearly underlines, which I believe Mukesh Pai did not mention, but he clearly underlines that imagination is more important than knowledge. We live in a world where the whole world, our teachers tell us knowledge is important, schools tell us, exams tell us, interviews tell us, media tells us, sociologists keep telling us that knowledge, information is the most important tool on this earth. The most knowledgeable scientist says that imagination is far more important than knowledge. Take it from me, Einstein was not a fool. Till 4, he could not speak. Till he was 7, he could not read. He was thrown out of the school. He could not get admission to Zurich Polytechnic. By the time he struggled, I will quote that his parents thought he was subnormal. The teachers described him as mentally slow. Okay? The teachers described him as mentally slow, unsociable. And they wrote that he was forever lost in foolish dreams. Einstein. And we all know that he did learn to do a little math. He did learn how to count numbers. And he did learn how to speak that humanity listens. And Einstein, you would be shocked and surprised when I learned this fact, which was not known to me, that after becoming the professor in maths and physics, for 7 years he could not find a job. So don't worry. Don't worry. For 7 years, Einstein could not find a job, so he took a secondary job as an assistant in the Swiss patent office. Nothing to do with science. This was in 1901. Now put your facts together. For 7 years, that means from 1901 to 1908, he was technically unemployed in his field. And when did he give us the theory of relativity? 1905. Einstein gave the greatest theory while he was jobless. The greatest theory that spins the minds of people, he gave it in 1905 when he had spare time and nothing to do. Don't think that if you don't have anything to do, you are doing nothing. There is the power latent in you. If you have the imagination that is fired up, you can make a difference. So from Einstein, who unraveled the magic of the unknown world, I'd like to take you to Edison, who lent magic to the known world. These scientists were talking about the invisible world, and Edison has made much of the visible world we see. Even in the case of Edison, in his own whole life, his knowledge-based pursuit was just 3 months. He has been to school just for 3 months. Again, similar story, kicked out. His parents, Edison's parents, they said that he was too stupid to learn anything. And the teacher said, how correct you are. This is Edison. He became deaf by 12, so he could not learn anything that the teachers told him. He became deaf when he was 12. And still we find that he was the person who lost his job a couple of times for being non-productive. All the terms that we use, I'm just putting it in your friendly terms. So he was fired a couple of times for being non-productive. But Edison, he came out to be again one of the finest scientists who has invented more than 1,000 inventions. The climax from where his quote comes from is this incident. Once, I personally went down to Menlo Park. I went down to Edison searching for his lab. He had a wooden lab, maybe the size of just this stage, Mukesh Bhai. All the inventions have come not from big halls and big systems and big facilities. They all came from a lab which is no bigger than this stage. I've seen it. It once so happened that his lab caught fire. Everything that Edison had created as notes was burned to ashes. Not only that, even his previous inventions were obliterated. His son came down and started searching for dad, saying, where is Edison? And he found him far away watching the fire. And the son said, Dad, he said, first, don't waste your time, call your mom. She will never see such a beautiful fire ever again. If you can consider your disasters even beautiful, you need damn good imagination. Here is Edison talking to his son. At that time, Edison was 67. Samajho bada? 67. And then he made a statement, the most beautiful thing about disasters are that all your errors are wiped away. God gives you the power to begin afresh. If you lose your job, you have an opportunity to change your career. Okay? If something doesn't come right, God has given you an opportunity to begin anew. And Edison, just after 3 weeks of this disaster, he gave the world the gramophone records. Imagine somebody who has so much imagination. Now his sentence will have meaning for you. You know what Edison writes? He goes a step ahead of Einstein. Einstein said imagination is more important than knowledge. You know what Edison writes? Invention is good imagination with a pile of junk. Even if you have a pile of junk and you have the power to imagine, you will be able to invent. He brought out inventions from ashes and a pile of junk of his laboratory, and he could shock the world. So simple message from this is, maybe you are a pile of junk. Who cares? Maybe you are not knowledgeable. Who cares? Maybe you don't have the talent that you see and you seek. Do you have imagination? The best mind has given guarantee that if you have imagination and you could be a pile of junk, you would be able to create the world. And I believe this is going to be very important as we move ahead. The message is loud and clear, written on the wall. Even with nothing, if you have imagination, you will be able to create everything. A simple example will also help you turn your ideas around. Once in a train, there was a blind man. You know, sometimes there are people who are blind, their eyes seem normal, but because they have some retinal dysfunction, they can't see. So normally you won't be able to recognize this guy wasn't blind. So he was a blind man sitting in a train compartment all alone. One of the stations, one passenger got on. From the shuffling and the movement, the blind man realized it was a woman. So she entered the compartment. Everybody wants to hide their infirmities. So before he felt that this lady recognizes that he's blind, he started looking out of the window. He started looking out the window. The lady sat down and she asked, what's your good name? He said, gave his name, and he said, but it's a lovely day outside. Because he was going to make sure she should not know he is blind. So the lady also looked out of the train window and she said, yes, it's a lovely day, very sunny. He started picking up cues. He said, yes, I love the sun. Because if it's cloudy and he could not see, he can't say there's a sun. So the lady said, oh, look at those cows in the field. That man said, yes, I really love cows and also the cow herds. He started talking. He said, the fields look lovely and green. The lady repeated, yes, I've never seen such fields before. Oh, look at those birds. And the man kept following the cue. Look at those birds. Suddenly the train went over a bridge. And the man said, I love rivers. And she said, yes, look at this river, so far, so huge, people bathing and all these things. For half an hour the conversation went on. The man never took his eyes off nature. He didn't want this lady to find out that he's blind. Then in the next station, the lady took his excuse, leave, and she left and got down. At that station, another man had got in. And when that man came into this compartment, this man turned to him and said, excuse me, sir, did you see one passenger, a lady, get down when you got on? The man said, yeah, I saw. He said, can you please describe the lady to me? Because he was so eager. By listening to the voice, the conversation, he was eager to find out what she looked like. So he said, can you describe this lady to me? This man said, oh, she was a young lady, well-dressed, very attractive, very beautiful. This man, he's imagining everything in his mind. He said, but for one thing. What? Because she was blind. Now take this idea back home. The lady didn't know the other guy was blind. She was taking cues from his conversation, and he was taking cues from her conversation. Even if both were blind, their imagination made them see the most beautiful nature that we could have seen. Sometimes you don't need eyes to appreciate the world. Sometimes you don't need cues to take you ahead. Your imagination, even with nothing, two blind people can see the world. Yes, I believe imagination can help you see the invisible. But I'm also telling you, imagination also helps you see the visible. How? I don't think I need to prove to you that imagination works. Just look around. And when you look around, everything that you see that has not been created by nature, everything that has been created by man, whether it's a chair or a watch or a mic or a stand or a stool or a house or a bridge, even the smallest thing like a gadget, everything that you see that has been created by man was once an imagination in someone's mind. Because he or she imagined it, it became real. So I don't think I need to prove to any of you that imagination works, my friends. Imagination is the only thing necessary to make things work. And it's important. Not only that, you look at the movement of society. It was imagination that brought out mankind from the dark ages into this civilized world. It was imagination that invented the first wheel. It was imagination that drove Columbus to America. It was imagination that discovered electricity. Everything that you see in this visible world, which has been created by man, is a result of first imagination. But not just individual imagination. There's a new word that has come in society. It is known as social imagination. You know what that is? Individuals you can imagine, but like DNA, like genetic code, like heredity, I have to agree that imagination is transferred from generation to generation to generation. Thousands of years ago, man looked at the moon, was wondering how he could get there. He didn't. The next generation didn't. Next generation didn't. Down the line, there comes one generation that reaches. We had been dreaming of flying. Maybe the first guys, Homo sapiens, who imagined didn't succeed. But now, because of that imagination that has been transferred as social imagination, fascination, we have succeeded. So please be very clear. Imagine something good. If you can't do it, somebody else will. And if you can't do it in this life, somebody else will do it in another life. If it's not done in one generation, then somewhere somebody will do it in the few generations later on. But imagination is one thing that's going to work for sure so long as this earth exists. It's a social imagination. So from individual imagination, we've moved down to social imagination. But you know what's happened? Imagination has brought us to the civilized world. But civilized world has also clipped our wings of imagination. As children, we probably had the greatest talent of imagination. Ask any child and ask him what does he want to be. Either he'll say president or Captain India, though we know it's very difficult and very dangerous. So he'll say, maybe I want to fly, be the president, be a king. I want to go to the moon. But as we grow, we have been constantly reminded that be practical. We have been told that be realistic. We have been told don't be foolish. And we have been told be knowledgeable, or at least look knowledgeable. Being is very difficult, but most of us are trying to look knowledgeable. So we have been constantly told, so these ideas have clipped our wings of imagination. And we have lost one of the greatest gifts that God gave us and put in our heart. And we have lost touch with base reality. But I also want to emphasize today that because imagination is so powerful, it also makes it so dangerous. Imagination is like fire. If the fire is uncontrolled, it burns, it destroys. It turns into ashes everything it touches. It rages. But if the same fire is controlled, it warms, it cooks, it lights, and it also protects. Similarly, imagination, if it is uncontrolled, and I'll tell you, if it's uncontrolled, it leads to false fears. It leads to prejudices, phobias, hallucinations. It leads to mass hysteria. And at the same time, you lose touch with reality. So I must give you the warning light before. But if the same imagination is controlled, I'm talking about positive imagination, not negative. If the same imagination is controlled, it helps you keep calm in a calamity. It brings back hope in hopeless situations. It gives you the faith to overcome most difficult times. And it also restores you to the ability to take you and touch higher reality and take you beyond the limitations of your body and mind. So you have both. This evening we want to further concentrate on controlled imagination. We want to concentrate on how we should indulge in positive imagination, which can help everyone. You know what Mark Twain said? He was very witty. And he also said, slightly deviating from what others have said, he said that you cannot depend on your eyes if your imagination is out of focus. Yeah? Go home and you'll think about it, then you'll know. If your imagination is out, if you go home and you know your wife is going to have a fight with you, even if she smiles, you have a fight. Eyes and imagination don't work. So I'm trying to say that Mark Twain has clearly said that what dangers of negative imagination can do. You cannot depend on your eyes if your imagination is out of focus. Let me explain in a very simple, systematically, analytical way. What do we normally do? We take 3 steps. First, we observe. Okay? Physically, we observe. Then we combine that observation with our perception. If you are walking in a park, and you see a man coming, you have observed that a man has come. Our perception, whether he's friendly or animosity, that perception will decide whether we go up to him or run away from him. Normally, the man is just walking. Okay? Our perception mixed with observation creates our reaction. But the power of imagination is our imagination multiplies and amplifies our perception. That's the most dangerous thing. Yes, we hear, we see, we feel, we touch. From that, we mix our perception. Rather than going around in many, many different ways, I'll just explain very shortly and simply. Very simply. Suppose we are sitting in this hall and the lights go out. I don't think it happens here. Let's hope it doesn't, because the situation is very grim. So suppose the lights go out. Our observation is no light. Okay? That observation is same for everybody, no light. But once that observation, physical observation continues for 5 minutes and 10 minutes, all the perceptions change. Perception comes into play. Somebody would think who's not happy with AMA would say, it's always like this in AMA. It's not like this, but I'm just saying that. Somebody would say, oh my God, when will this finish? Somebody who's very hyper, he might think, there must be a sabotage. Hyper. Somebody who is thinking that, okay, let's wait 10 minutes, it'll come back. All our perception will generate different reaction. Okay? But if a simple announcement is made, everybody stays seated. Don't move. We take the word don't move as don't breathe. That's our imagination. So it's like everybody remains seated. You know, it's like in the planes. I always laugh But don't tell anybody that I laugh. But when you go into a plane, and all the announcements that are made in a plane are so euphemistic, meaning they are so done in a way that to make you feel calm. Have you ever really realized that they can't make you calm? They'll say that in case of an emergency, please put your belt on. You are flying at 30,000 feet in the air. What would the belt do? Nobody's thought, but we put the belt in and we feel I'm safe. You are flying at 30,000 feet in the air and nobody has complained or analyzed. And see how they say it. In case of an uneventful event. What's an uneventful event? It's a crash. Okay, they say in case of an uneventful event, okay, and if there is less oxygen, I'm diverting here, but I think I should take the liberty. And if the oxygen masks drop, okay, please put them on and breathe normally. Can you? If at 30,000 feet up in the air, the oxygen mask drops, can you and me breathe normally? We'll go, oh my God, what's happened? See? All these words are there to subdue your imagination. And then they say, in the case of an emergency, the plane makes a landing on water. How do you land on water? It's a crash. All these words, but if they said, if there's a crash, you know you won't survive. But I'm just trying to say that all our, now when you get into the plane, don't remember me. Because I won't be there to help you. But anyway, I just wanted to tell you that how imagination works. You have observation, perception adds color, imagination removes the boundaries. So if you're in this hall, the lights are out, and suddenly everything's fine, you're happy murmur and things like that. And suddenly there's an announcement, very nervous Mukesh Pai says, please be seated, don't move. We have an issue at hand. And suddenly somebody will think, what's happening? Is there a bomb? Is there a sabotage? Have been surrounded by terrorists? And then a smallest shuffle or a smallest scream will evoke a mass hysteria. Your eyes can't help when your imagination is out of focus. We need to deal with imagination as we are dealing with fire. We need to control it. We need to look at it positively. We need to make it and turn it in a way that it helps us grow and enhance our life. So it's very important that today we should be discussing of how we can practice this imagination which will benefit us and the people around us. My simple question is that if imagination works for the world around you, make it work for the world within you. If you pick up the basic values and ideas of imagination, and I can tell you, it's going to work for you in a way that you have never imagined before. Let's be honest and answer me very honestly. There is no catch question in this, but it's something that I've explored with my mind alone. Be very honest. As thinking people, professionals, can you imagine that one day man will colonize the moon? Say yes or no. Bolo mote thi. Don't be scared. There's no catch question. As thinking people, can we imagine that one day man will colonize the moon? Yes. Can we imagine that one day man will land on Mars? 100%? Okay. So now I ask you, as thinking people, can you imagine that one day India will become corruption free? Bola. No, I'm asking you another question now. Can we imagine that one day there will be real peace on this earth, no wars? See, because we can imagine the moon and Mars, we will achieve it. Because we can't imagine corruption free and peace, we will not achieve it. Anything begins with imagination, and you have to break that tradition. John F. Kennedy said, why is there no peace between Israel and Palestine? Because people keep referring back to history. And they say statistics won't allow it. We need guys who break away from statistics, who break away from history, who can imagine and then take us forward. If we so happily imagine things which are so difficult, the moon and the earth, the atmosphere is different. The climate is hostile. The planet is different. Still we can imagine and go further and think that man will colonize this. Corruption and peace, they are affecting us directly. Still we have chosen to stop imagining it and accepting it. The single message tonight for everybody is, imagine a difference in things that really make a difference to you. It's very important. It's practical. And when you start doing it, then I believe that whatever things that we are trying to think of will make us happy and will take us forward. So now I'm asking you that why don't we use the same power? Why don't we use the same power to change the course of our lives that we live? You, me, everybody. So let's go into the practical stuff. Can you imagine that you will go home for a whole month and not quarrel with your wife? Don't laugh. I know it's funny, but don't laugh at least. See, we don't. Can you imagine that you will not lose your head or your temper with your son for the next month? No. We have accepted the situation that when I go home, quarrels are okay, and it is nutrition, and I'm used to it. Because we have accepted a situation, we don't bring a change to that situation. Because we believe in statistics. You know, by the way, I just read some statistics. And they say the average couple argues 208 times in a month. That's about 7 times in a day. And I believe everybody here is above average. No, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying we keep falling back on statistics and the past, and we can't imagine even the simple things that can bring change to our own home, our environment, our work environment, our ethics. We don't do it anymore. We are so happy. Just think if imagination has taken man from the trees and he has leapt to the moon. I don't think we need any other proof to convince us that we can bring a change to our lives. It all begins with imagination. If you don't imagine, there will be no determination, no communication, no realization. Nothing follows if you don't imagine. The moment you imagine, everything else follows like a jigsaw. So it's most important that we start imagining a different you and family, a different work environment, a different society, and a difference that will make us in our own time. This is not something that I've imagined. There is something that is proven by science day in and day out. Science has a library of proofs that supports this idea that imagination, we dealt with that it affects society, that imagination affects the personal lives of people. Science has proofs. I'd like to tell you a dramatic story of Air Force Colonel George Hall. George Hall is an American Air Force colonel. He was captured by Vietnam. 7 years he was in the prison as a prisoner of war in Vietnam. And obviously, Vietnam threw all the Geneva regulations out of the door. They didn't believe in taking care of prisoners. Nothing was there. So he was really tortured and captured and harassed for 7 continuous years. He came out from imprisonment. Now listen to this. He went back to New Orleans. He participated in a professional golf tournament circuit, PGA. In New Orleans, in a professional golf tournament, 7 days after his release, George Hall stunned other participants by shooting 76, 4 below par, and winning the game. Then they asked him that you've just come out of imprisonment. How could you do it? He says, 7 years every day, sitting in that cell, I imagined I was playing golf. 7 years every day he imagined that. First I started with all my past games. Then I started predicting my future games. Even in real life, I had never shot 76. First time he holds a golf club and he shoots 76. I'm telling you, nowadays soldiers are being trained that if you are captured or tortured, the best option out is imagination. So if you feel your situation is torturing you and you feel trapped, get out of it through imagination. It will work. You will find a window. You will find a door, and these doors and windows won't have to be pushed open. They open on their own. Provided you stand before them. So I'm telling you, science has proved it. Not only that, sports psychologists and special athlete trainers. I'll give you a quick list. Sports psychologists and special athlete trainers, they're saying that visualization and imagination has become a permanent part of training for all sports people. You might have heard of the name Jack Nicklaus. It is said he played golf like Michelangelo carved statues. And Michelangelo carved statues, you know in which matter? Whenever there was a statue or a marble piece, Angelo just said, I already see the angel in it. All I have to do is to set him free. He could imagine Sir Jack Nicklaus, who has won more than 18 major championships. When he was asked that what was the secret, I'm quoting him, I'm not saying anything off the back foot. He writes, I never hit a single golf ball, even in practice or in real time, without having first imagined it in my mind again and again. I would begin by seeing the golf ball land where I wanted to finish, beautifully packed in the green grass. I would see the trajectory, the path of the ball. I would also see the angle of my swing. And after rehearsing everything again and again in my mind, the real thing was just action replay. We do action replay a lot of times, but we do it after the event. I'm just trying to say we are all masters in post-imagination, become masters in pre-imagination. If our interview has not gone right, we dream at night and thinking that I set it right. It's too late. Dream before that day and set it right. It will be set right. Move away from past and post-imagination. Be proactive. Not only that, Jack Nicklaus says this. You have heard of the name Michael Phelps? Perhaps the greatest swimmer that mankind has ever produced. Michael Phelps in 3 Olympics, he won 14 gold medals. He broke the world record 39 times over and over again. 39 times, Michael Phelps. He confesses in his book, Beneath the Surface. Michael Phelps writes that when I'm about to go to sleep, try this, when I'm about to go to sleep, in my bed, I imagine the temperature of the water. I imagine my dive. I imagine my glide. I imagine my shift. I also imagine my flip and reaching the wall, turning back. I imagine the 100th of a second. And then I imagine and see myself in my sleep swimming the length as many times as I would have had to in a real race. Maybe 10 times what we would do, imagine it once, fine, let it work. It doesn't work. I imagine the entire race in my mind, and that's the secret of my success. Science says, athletes say, that imagination works for individuals of peaking your performance. Not only that, Michael Johnson, the great 200, 400 meter race, just before his final in Australia Olympics, one day before, where every other athlete was on the field practicing, Johnson was the only one. For 24 hours he remained in his hotel room. All he did was to run the race 20 times over and over again, and he says it was so easy on the day. Can you understand? You need that efficiency, but first you need to explore your mind and get into imagination. Yes, it works for individuals, but it also works for the entire nation. Obviously, the experiment was done by Russians in 1980 Olympics. You know, Russians and China, they can do anything because they don't have, individual voices. So, what Russia did, fantastic analysis this is. Russia, the entire Russian Olympic team, they divided the Olympic team in 4 divisions, A, B, C, D. The first, Group A, was asked to do practice for their game, just pure traditional physical practice. Group B was encouraged that 75% physical practice, 25% imagination and visualization. Group C, 50% physical practice and 50% imagination and visualization. Group D, 25% physical practice and 75% imagination and running it in your mind and doing it in your mind. And to their biggest surprise, after all the medals were tallied, Group D collected the highest number of medals. When you spend more time thinking about your thing through and through, you are more likely to succeed. So imagination works. If it works for them, then it's going to work for everybody. And truly enough, I want to also emphasize, imagination is not a one-off event. It will make you win in one race. No, it's not like that. It's not just helping you in a race or a game. It's not something that helps you as a country or in Olympics. Imagination has the power to change the very nature of your being. It helps you rise against all odds of life. All the difficulties that are thrown before you, it's not just a game or winning a game. It's the game of life, and you succeed with all limitations, all junk that has been thrown in you. You say, Swami, I didn't do anything, it just happened. Fine. You take you as you are. And if you have the right imagination, people have succeeded against all odds. The most famous example that I don't want to go deep in, but I should touch, is of Mahatma Gandhi. Was he handsome? Everybody loves Mahatma Gandhi's ideals, but nobody wants to look like him or be like him. Yeah, we love Gandhian ideals, but I want all the stuff that I am, and then plus Gandhi. So, he wasn't handsome. Was he a great speaker? No. Was he strong? No. Could he even show his bravery and fight? No. Did everybody in India agree with him? No. At that time when Gandhi came up with this idea of non-violent freedom struggle, majority of India was not in agreement. Acharya Kripalani told Gandhi in a huge discussion, he said, he was a historian. He said, Gandhi, history tells me that all freedom struggles have been violent. Non-violence won't work. So Kripalani tells Gandhi that history tells me that it has to be violent, non-violence will not work. The only thing Gandhi said, history will change. He was one guy against the imagination of the whole world. He could imagine there can be another way, and he proved it right in our back door. I'm telling you, if you have the zeal and the power to imagine, you can bring a social change not only to yourself, but to the entire nation and the entire world. You must be fired in a well. Another classic example is Winston Churchill. Similarly, Winston Churchill, they write about him. He was again a dropout. I think we should do a school that drops people out. We'll get better people. In MIT, there's a professor who runs a course on failure. Right? And everybody enlists. And somebody asked him that, have they failed the course? He said, all of them. That's how you graduate. This is on the side. But Churchill, it is said Churchill, when he was admitted in Harrow, we all say Churchill was educated in Harrow, but he was admitted in the lowest division of the lowest class. That's Winston Churchill. When Churchill, he had a stutter. When he tried to fight for the parliament, he lost. And he became the prime minister at 62 at the worst situation of the British Empire. When your dad and mom and everybody has, incurred huge debts and you are born, God forgive you. Because you just end up, just paying up all the debts as you grow. So Churchill came as a prime minister at the time when British Empire was at the lowest. And at a time when the whole world imagined that England had no class against Germany. Imagine when Germany has won whole of Europe. If somebody has won whole of India, then do you think Sri Lanka has a chance? You understand? When Hitler won and steamrolled entire Europe, England was like a simple island, and Hitler made a statement that I would wring off the neck of Britain like a chicken. This was the situation. When whole of Britain imagined that they would lose. When America initially did not come to the rescue, because America also felt that they have no chance. Okay, wait and watch is the best game. So even when America, Britain, the whole world believed and imagined that Britain would lose, Churchill only had the imagination that England would win. And it is said it is his imagination that powered the nation to victory. You need to have imagination, and imagination influences people everywhere. And that's when Churchill wrote, listen to this, you create your own universe by your imagination. The stronger your imagination, the stronger your universe. And then he writes, when you stop dreaming, your universe ceases to exist. So the universe that you create for your own self, the values that you give in your own home, the things that you teach to people around you, all are fired, ultimately begin from your imagination. And it's also true. As Mukesh Bhai mentioned, we've all heard of Walt Disney. But Walt Disney was kicked out by an editor with these words. He lacked imagination and had no good ideas that would work. We still remember Walt Disney, but we don't remember the editor who kicked him out. I'm just trying to tell you, nobody remembers the editor who kicked him out, but we remember Walt Disney, and he built Disneyland. It wasn't a piece of cake for him. He went bankrupt several times. But his imagination helped him go on, even in difficult roads, and he succeeded. So we know of so many stories. Have you heard of Henry Ford? I think many of you might be even driving Ford. Okay? He went bankrupt 5 times. So if you haven't been bankrupt 5 times, you still have a chance to be Ford or drive a Ford. Now is how much you keep your minds open, your eyes open, and I do believe that there's always a chance if your imagination is living, your universe is alive. I think you've heard of the name Lance Armstrong. And you know what Tour de France is? I don't think you know what Tour de France is. It's a bicycle race. It's perhaps the toughest sport on this entire nation. Initially, Tour de France was over 5,000 kilometers long. But as our bodies changed, they brought it down to 3,200 kilometers. It takes 21 days in bicycling. You bicycle 21 days through mountains and ravines. આપણા જેમ નહીં, આપણે ટ્રકની પાછળ પકડી લઈએ અને તો you can go for kilometers, you know. એવું નથી, nothing like that. It is perhaps the biggest test of a person's stamina. The first time Lance Armstrong entered Tour de France, he came down a dumb roll last, 97th place. People told him he should take another profession, Lance Armstrong. But to make things worse, he developed cancer. And not only that, he developed cancer in 1996. He developed a brain tumor, which made it so difficult to coordinate his hand movements. If you only have news that somebody in your family has developed cancer, you'll get scared thinking genetic nathi nale. This guy had cancer, brain tumor in the brain, and in 1999 he had recovered so much, and he writes because of his imagination. He recovered so much that he won Tour de France for 7 times consecutively, and nobody on this earth has been able to do this ever before. Imagine a person who has been written off, a person who has nothing to live up to. The same person can go and go beyond because of his spirit of imagination. Another thing, another story which can help you at different levels. We all know of the woman J.K. Rowling. Yeah? You probably have not met her, but you've read her books. Sometimes some people have read them many times. And sometimes people see them as books of values. Some people see them as book of imagination. What is it? Imagination. But the story of this woman, she was living on welfare. Welfare means no money in the bank, getting checks from the government, and eking out a living on welfare. She was so unsuccessful that she contemplated suicide many times. She used to take drugs for depression, totally depressed woman, no money, contemplating suicide. But she had a passion and imagination for writing a book. And she also says she has lived out her imagination in that book. She lived out her imagination in that book. What's happened? That she took the manuscript of that book to the first publisher, he rejected it. The second, rejected it. The third, threw the manuscript in the dustbin. The fourth, rejected it. Fifth, rejected it. Sixth, her depression kept growing and growing. 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th. 12 publishers rejected it. She went to the most smallest publisher available, Bloomsbury, and begged, please publish one of my books, please publish. And when they published that book has sold 450 million copies around the world. It has captured and fired the imagination of the whole world. Imagination, don't just keep it to yourself. Share it. Be wise. Control it. And trust me that if you have imagination, even from the dumps, you will create sunrises. Even from the ashes, you will make yourself anew. And the only thing that you can do is to change yourself through practical imagination. I will summarize what we mean by practical imagination, and I want all of you to sincerely practice it if you can. Practical imagination is not just sitting down and visualizing or imagining the reward, the end, or the outcome. Everybody would do this. We're having a cricket match, I've got the trophy. So I imagine it every day, 3 times or 20 times. It won't work. Imagining just the end is not enough. I request you imagine the process and the journey. See how things change. Don't just imagine lifting up the trophy, that's fine. Imagine yourself going onto the field. Imagine the couple of balls. Imagine your action. Imagine your difficulties. When you imagine sequentially, then the reward follows naturally. How would you do it? Let's take an example. Suppose you are imagining that you're going to go home and have no quarrel. Yeah, do it seriously. And don't laugh me off. Okay? Suppose we imagine that I'm going to go home and I don't want a quarrel. Okay? So you imagine yourself getting out of your car, ringing the bell 3 times and your wife doesn't open. Still, you don't get angry. You have to imagine that. See, that's what I'm trying to tell you how imagination works. Once she opens the door, and this time, because deliberately, normally to irritate your wife, you keep parking the shoes at the wrong place, you take them off at the right place. Imagination works. When you go home and she asks you a couple of questions, and you've already imagined that you're going to give the answers. Normally the man doesn't give the answer. You know, when the wife asks that, what did you do? And he goes, nothing. And she said, you've been out 8 hours. He said, yeah, but did nothing. And she can't believe you. You were out for 8 hours and you did nothing. Okay? So you ask her, what did you do at home? She goes, nothing. We go out and eat. I'm trying to tell you, you have to imagine. Then when you're sitting at the dinner table, no fussing over the dinner. Imagine. Even if your children are rude, they make a couple of sounds. You're not going to get angry. Imagine. If you imagine the process, you will gain the award naturally. But what we tend to do is that we imagine 100% in the exam, but we don't imagine us studying hard. Now, I'm trying to be very honest. You know, once I just met this kid and I said, how much marks are you going to get in the exam? He goes, 40. I said, why? He said, 60% તો સિલેબસનું બહારનું પૂછ્યું હતું. તું સિલેબસની બહાર ફરતો તો એનું શું? I'm just trying to tell you. I am trying to tell you very simple that if you want to pass an exam, imagine you're studying hard, revising, going in, reading the questions, and imagine the entire process, and then you will be able to find and go beyond. Even for a simple thing like giving an interview, so many people feel nervous and edgy before they give an interview. Why can't you just imagine the whole interview? Like I said, we many times imagine the interview post-interview. Once we've got 10 things wrong, we say, I should have said that, I should have said that. Now, you know, most of the times we rehearse our arguments later. I could have told him this, but it's too late. So I'm trying to tell you, even break down the process. Imagine everything sequentially and 100% you have the power. You'll tell me how. You know, our interaction with other people are basically dependent on our past experiences. If you are going down, I'm taking this example because I want your homes to be peaceful. If you are going down, you already have an image of your wife, because she's going to shout or not listen or not respond. And your wife already has the great image of you. Okay? Because you know what happens in marriage? Before you get married, they are heavenly days. Why? Because you are eager to please each other. And once you get married, you are eager to be pleased by each other. That's the smallest difference that makes marriage hell. I am saying, even after marriage, why are you not eager to please each other? The only thing that they argue about, look, I got up ready early and you paid no attention to me. If you change your imagination, it works. But you have to sequentially break it down and then it moves. I was reading a book, a fantastic book. The title is Optimism Bias. It just doesn't click, you know. That man or human beings are wired to think things optimistically. Say, which is interesting here, you will tell me that, Swami, all my past experience of my wife are fixed and they're there and she's not going to change. Past cannot change. Who says past cannot change? In this book it says, the experiment they've done that the human brain, when you think about the past, certain portions of your brain light up. Okay? So then they experimented with the same people, said, think of your future. And when they started thinking of the future, the same portion of the brain started lighting up. Surprising? They were expecting that when you thought of the past, a portion lit up. When you thought of the future, something else lit up. You know what they write in the book? That the same part of the brain is responsible for storing your past and contemplating your future. So what happens? He says most of the time we project our past as our future. If I'm going there and everything's going to be full, nobody's going to be there. So even you predict a future saying, I'm going to go there, nobody's going to be there because you had 20 past experiences. Your relations with people, I'm going to go there, he's not going to get up and smile at me. So you predict that he's going to get up because my past experiences. What this book says, that man has the ability of photoshopping his past and then creating a future. Even if your past tells you that there's going to be a fight, photoshop it and create a pleasant future. I guarantee you in 1 year you will be coming back to me and say, the Swami, there was a change. Change your predictions of the future and don't just depend on the past. Those people who have gone beyond have been able to make a difference. And seeing yourself free from your past, seeing yourself free from negativity. You know everything is wrong, people are shouting, still to feel that he's okay. Once I know with Pramukh Swami, one man, very senior officer, he had come to me and he wanted to stay in America. Swami said, because he has come to us, make facilities so he can stay in America. So I phoned up to our people in America and I said, okay, arrange for his facility so he could stay for a week or two or something like that. He went. And then after reaching there, he said, it's not a week, he wants to stay a year. I was shocked. I have my imagination is very small. I have to confess. I said, yeah, I imagined 1 week can go into 2 weeks can go into a month. But yeah, in America, somebody keeping your ear free, it's impossible. So I checked around with his colleagues and compatriots. And they said, okay, this guy is not that good and he's not okay and he's a bit wily and a bit not fine. I said, yeah, this is post-imagination now. I never thought of it before. So then I went and approached Pramukh Swami. I said, Swami, this is the situation. So this guy is really not good. You know what Pramukh Swami said? Swami said, we have given our word. Our word is more important than reality. Our word is very important. So I said, okay. Then I said, Bapa, but સારો માણસ નથી, ભૂલ કરે છે. I was looking for a reason to say no. મેં કહ્યું, બાપા આ સારો નથી, ભૂલ કરે છે. You know what Pramukh Swami said? Swami said, બ્રહ્મવિહારી, આ બ્રહ્માંડમાં દરેક ભૂલથી ભરેલા છે. તો પણ આપણે માનવું કે બધા જ સારા છે. Can you create a world view that would turn the most negative into positive? You can Photoshop your past experience and you can create a worldview that will change your life. And this is the essence of spirituality. Just as there is individual imagination, social imagination, I would like to explore at the end spiritual imagination. And this is the essence of spirituality. It is not just you on your own who is imagining, it's with the help of the energy of God and the Guru. The Guru guides you and creates an imagination which instills in you the strength to go beyond. How, you'll ask me? My simple question is, Adhyatman Swami would vouchsafe, the simple question is, what is meditation? Meditation is imagination, that you are free from negative influence. Though you may not be calm, but to imagine that you are calm. Meditation is spiritual imagination, and I believe everybody has experienced that it works. So imagining yourself calm despite the fact you may not be calm. Imagine yourself as positive despite the fact there may be negative energies in you is a key to become positive. That's what spiritual imagination tells us. What is prayer? Everybody in this hall must have prayed for somebody sometime in difficult situations, either for themselves or others. What do you do in prayer? We reach out to God and then we imagine, okay, God, this guy is ill, terminal disease, it's difficult. Please make him happy, please make him well. You are imagining a good life for him. Prayer is imagination turned to God. Meditation is imagination turned inwards. They're all imagination as you move ahead. What is forgiving? When you forgive somebody, is it that he has been cured? You know he has the same problems, the same vices, the same difficulties. When you forgive, you imagine that he has these problems, but I see you without those problems. So even the act of forgiving is spiritual imagination. Imagination is a part of not just science and society, is a great part of spirituality. What is sadhana? Come on, what is sadhana? It is said in the Swaminarayan religion, in Loya 7, Bhagavan Swaminarayan says that you have Paramatma God, Parabrahma, and you are Atma, Brahman. Though you are with the body, if you constantly imagine yourself as Atma, free from the body, free from thoughts, free from your past and karmas, through this spiritual imagination, you one day become the Atma and you are put in the service of Paramatma forever. Don't tell me there is anything beyond imagination. If imagination can take you from the earth to heaven, then what can't it do on earth? It's important, even this sadhana. But the critical thing is, what is creation? What is creation? It is said in the Hindu Shastras that Sa Ekshata, God saw. It is said God did a sankalpa. God did a sankalpa, God saw, and creation emerged. If God can imagine and the whole creation emerges, I'm telling you, we have that essence of divinity. If you imagine, you will create your own universe. It's important that strength lies within us and we have to use it. And I'm also telling you, all the great spiritual founders, what have they done? Take Buddha. Buddha, he saw an old man. He saw a diseased man. He saw a dead man. And he saw a sannyasi who had left everything before everything leaves him. He saw a wise man. By just seeing and observing these four different people, Buddha imagined a life free of disease, free of death, free of age, and free of misery. And he gave us a philosophy that is still attracting thousands of people around the world. So imagination plays a part not in just science, society, but in spirituality as well. And it can work for you because I've seen it work for so many people. Pramukh Swami Maharaj, our spiritual leader, he's 90. Even at 90, he's so active in society, in the works and everything that he does to serve society. But he's one of the greatest gifts that Swami has given to all of us. He has given us the power to imagine spiritually, so we can reprogram our lives. I'll just give you two examples, and that should be enough to give you faith that you can do it. There was a man, his name is Harshad Brahmbhatt. And Harshad Brahmbhatt, I remember, I never knew him. I was sitting in the Shahibag temple one afternoon. He just walked in and he said, Swamiji, is Pramukh Swami here? I said, yes. I said, who are you? He said, Swami, he was the senior vice president of Reliance, Gujarat Corporate Affairs. No ordinary guy. So I said, but why do you come? He said, Swami, I'm thinking of giving up my addictions. He was hesitant. I said, okay, this will be the best. Let's go. Swami would be up there. He will just go to bed in the afternoon in 5-10 minutes. I'll just take you. Harshad Bhai says, no, Swami, but first quickly listen to my story. I said, what? He said, I started smoking when I was 12. I am 53, 41 years I have been smoking. I said, okay, no problem. He said, no, there is a problem. I did a Pad Yatra to Ambaji. And in that Pad Yatra, I have done it many times and given up my addictions many times. But I keep breaking my pledge. I have been to Tirupati. In that pilgrim place, I also gave up the addiction, but I could not keep the pledge. When my father was being cremated, on his funeral pyre, I put that addiction, and Swami, I still broke it. I put my hand on the head of my son, and in his name I've taken a pledge. But for 40 years I have been struggling, and it doesn't work. I said, look, you have been struggling on your own. Let's get a little bit of energy of God and a guru. Let's come up. When he went up, I remember the scene. It was a bit chaotic. Around Swami, there were so many people hustling and bustling for me to get through, even to talk about Harshad Bhai. All these details were not possible. I just brought him in, and Harshad Bhai just looked at Swami, and Swami said, I told Swami, Swami, he has an addiction. Swami said, no. Swami, I can see him de-addict hundreds of smokers. Harshad Bhai could not imagine that. Pramukh Swami could imagine something even he could not imagine. He put a little water and then he left. And to this day, 5 years, he has not taken a cigarette all his life. I believe if Harshad Bhai is here, he was going to be here today, but Harshad Bhai, he is a senior vice president. And the crux I'm giving you, that our imagination will have limitation. There are things you won't be able to imagine for yourself. That's why a real life guru can help you imagine something beyond yourself. He helps you. Another example which is also equally shocking, and I'm relating it today, that Harshad Bhai wanted to give up addiction. Here's a classic case of a person who did not want to give up addiction. Harshad Bhai could not imagine, but this person is a young guy, celebrity status, well off, eloquent. You've probably seen him on TV. He's a youth icon. And when I met him a few years back, he confessed to me, he says, Swami, the biggest addiction I have is meat. In his own words, he told me, there is nothing that moves that I have not tasted. Shocking, but he told me. And not only that, he's also looked upon as the brand ambassador for cigars. That's a lot of work for us. He would smoke 2 cigars a day. That's almost around 60 to 70,000 rupees per month. He could not imagine himself free from meat or cigars. Nor could his parents, nor could his friends, and nor could the entire Gujarat, because so many people told me it's not possible, and nor could India. But Swami gently instilled this imagination into his mind, and this person rose beyond himself, and he gave up forever meat and cigar for good, and that is nobody else but Devang Nanavati. I will ask Devang to stand up. He was a star campaigner for us in Lead India. And it's important that to lead India, you need to be able to first change yourself. You have succeeded in changing yourself. And all our prayers are with you that you will succeed in changing the nature of our nation as well. It's very important that change begins with you. Sometimes if you can't imagine, then somebody else will help you imagine. I'm just telling you, if you can imagine a different worldview, it makes peace. Just a couple of days back, 24th September, we all know that it's 9 years before Akshardham was attacked. That night was horrible and I don't want to remember it, but I also have to confess that I just can't forget it. It threw up so many questions in my mind about religion, about fanaticism, about terrorism. But it also answered so many questions in my heart. Because I also believe that day when everything was fire, experts, sociologists, and leaders predicted that there would be a huge backlash. Gujarat would be aflame again and again. And I remember at night while the attack was still on, Pramukh Swami phoned us and he told me, "Mathe barafni paat rakje. પૂરતું ખૂનામરકી થઈ છે. એક પણ આપણા અવાજ કે ખોટા આંસુથી લોકોને દુઃખ ના થાય. Be calm, be patient." Swami made an appeal for peace all to the devotees and so many people. And I know majority of India came to a standstill the next day to show support. But the biggest support that people could have come together is to show for peace. While everybody imagined violence, Pramukh Swami was perhaps the only leader who imagined that there was peace, and that imagination worked for Gujarat and all of us so we could remain in peace. It's very important that we learn to think slightly different. And if we imagine something different, it brings a change. Pramukh Swami's Guru Yogiji Maharaj, he was in Gondal. And as you know, I also invite you to our temple in Shahibag or anywhere. But what used to happen in Gondal, that every time somebody came with new shoes or new champals, they would magically disappear. You know that happens in temples, you know. There will be so many guys who keep telling me that, Swami, I'm stopped coming to the temple because I have to visit a shoe shop more than the temple. It still happens even in Shahibag temple, let me tell you. So if something happens to you, it's statistics. Okay? But I'm trying to tell you that in Gondal, Yogiji Maharaj, very kind-hearted sadhu, gentle, very innocent. He got all these young youths together and he said, we have to catch this guy, the thief. Catch him. Plant yourself in different places. But we want to know who comes down and takes away all the champals of the devotees. They were all sitting there watching in disguise. A young guy with Tilak Chandlo. That's the best disguise. A young guy with Tilak Chandlo. Okay. And he came up doing dhun. While everybody's in the aarti, he put his feet into a new pair of champals, which were laid out as a trap, ACB. So they was laid out as a trap. And when he was about to leave, the youths caught him. They caught him, they started beating him because we have a habit of taking law in our hand. So just as they were just trying to beat him, a senior devotee, Hakka Bapu, he was passing by. And everybody said, okay, let's take him to Yogiji Maharaj. We've caught the culprit. Hakka Bapu said, you please deliver your judgment first. Then take him to Yogi Baba. His court is different. They said, no, we want to take him to Yogiji Maharaj. When they took him to Yogiji Maharaj and they proudly said, Swami, he's the thief. Yogi Baba looked at him and he said, nah, he can't be a thief. Ato mukta che. He's a devotee, he can't be a thief. Look, he's got a Tilak Chandlo. They said, no, Swami, he's the thief. He said, no, you must be mistaken. He can't be the thief. And they had to free him. You know what has happened? This incident happened somewhere around in 1960s. That thief went home. He could not have imagined that he's no longer a thief, but a sadhu could. He went home and he decided that if a sadhu saw me as a good person, let me change my ways. He has become a permanent devotee. He lives in Baroda, the thief who changed because of imagination. I am asking you, if sadhus can look at even thieves and inspire them to change, why can't you look at your own children? Why can't you look at your own friends? Why can't you look at the people who matter to you most? Look at them differently, and I promise you they will inspire you and they will change. They will surprise you. So please use this gift of imagination in the best possible way. I would like to end, to give you the power. I'd like to end with a story that summarizes everything that I've said beforehand and also makes you more responsible for everything that you have heard. In the ancient Indian tradition, there's a story of Kalpavruksha. Kalpavruksha is a tree. When you are under it, whatever wish you make comes true. So there was a Kalpavruksha. First, a traveler was just passing by. He was under the Kalpavruksha, he did not know. So while he was passing by, he said he was so hungry. He said, oh, I could just imagine a good meal. Straight away from the heavens, a great meal arrived. He ate, immediate need. But he didn't think that why this happened. He just ate and moved on. Many of us are used to a comfortable life. Once you satisfy your need, you don't care anymore. Simple, comfortable life. Then came a traveler who was walking and he was tired and he thought, oh, he just imagined what if there was a horse nearby. A horse arrived and he climbed the horse and then he became busy for the whole day. He just moved on with his life and work and profession. He just moved on. There came a third person. He was a carpenter. He was just passing around the tree, and under the tree he started thinking, oh, what a lovely tree. How good it would be to have an axe. And he saw an axe hanging on the branch. And then he said, oh my God, what would happen if the axe fell on my head? He died. I'm telling you, your mind is the Kalpavruksha. You have the power of imagining. Either you imagine a one good day, it will give you a good day. Either you imagine a good life, it will give you a whole good life. Or either you imagine death, it will give you death. Imagination is not useless, it is just used less. If you stop abusing it, you will start using it. And as Emerson has said, remember everybody who is here in the halls, who are sitting and outside. Emerson has said, imagination is not a talent of some men, but it is the health of every man. It is not a talent of just some few select men, it is the health of every man. And I want to tell you, if imagination works for the world, for society, for science, for spirituality, make it work for you, and I'm going to do that tomorrow. I'll leave you that tomorrow morning, when I go before the murtis of God, and when I pray before Bhagavan Swaminarayan and Pramukh Swami, I'm going to imagine this entire audience in my prayers, and I'm going to pray for you, and you will feel them that they work. Thank you very much.